This will be for the con exercise, factoring quadratics with a common factor. All right, so we want to factor this completely. And for the first step, there are two main elements to worry about. So the first step in factoring this, you want to factor the coefficient and the variable. Okay, the coefficient is the number that's times x in each case, or in this case, the constant term. And for the coefficients, you want to look for the GCF. That stands for greatest common factor. All right, so let's do that first. We have a 7, a 28, and a negative 35. And in order to find the greatest common factor, you can write out all the factors, but the quickest way is to look at the smallest number of the three, so that one is 7, and see if the other numbers are divisible by 7. I know you can do 28 divided by 7, and you can do negative 35 divided by 7. So if the two larger ones are divisible by the smallest one, that number is the greatest common factor, so I'm going to factor out a 7 to start with. Now for the variable, you look for the smallest exponent. This is x squared, this is x to the first, and this doesn't have an x. Since this one doesn't have an x, we cannot factor out any x. All right, so we're just going to start with a 7 and write parentheses, and we are going to divide each term in this trinomial by 7. All right, so that is basically the first step. All right, 7x squared divided by 7, that's just x squared. Positive 28x divided by 7, that's positive 4x. And negative 35 divided by 7 is negative 5. Okay, if you want to double check, just distribute. 7 times x squared is 7x squared. 7 times 4x is 28x. And 7 times negative 5 is negative 35. Now this part of the binomial in parentheses is in the form of ax squared plus bx plus c. All right, and you can see there is no number or coefficient in front of the x squared, so a is just 1, and we don't need to worry about it. But what you do when there's no coefficient in front of the x squared, you want to write out the factors of c. All right, you basically want to find two numbers that multiply to c and add to b. All right, so since you want two numbers that multiply to c, we start by writing the factors of c. All right, and we can see that c is this right here, that's negative 5. All right, so write out the factors. What times what is negative 5? Well, that will be 5 times negative 1, negative 5 times positive 1. And you can stop when you find two numbers that add to b. We can see right here that b is positive 4. So do we have a pair that adds to positive 4? Yes, 5 plus negative 1 gives us positive 4. Okay, so we keep the 7, and this trinomial is now going to be written as two binomials. Okay, since we have x squared, we're going to start with x times x, because x times x gives you x squared, and then just use positive 5 and negative 1 in the parentheses. Positive 5 and negative 1. All right, and that is your final answer. If you really wanted to double check, you can unpack this by using FOIL or the distributive property, but this right here should match this part right here. All right, so 7 parentheses x plus 5 parentheses twice x minus 1 and close parentheses. All right, so make sure you type it how you wrote it. Make sure you use the parentheses. Okay, so same thing right here. We have a trinomial we want to start with the greatest common factor on the coefficients. All right, so again, just look at the smallest number, that's a 2, and see if the other two numbers are divisible by 2. 18 is divisible by 2, and so is 36. So I'm going to start by factoring out the greatest common factor, which is 2. And as far as the x's are concerned, the smallest exponent, well, right here we don't have an x, so we cannot factor out an x. So that's it for the first step. All right, you take each term and divide by 2. 2x squared divided by 2 is x squared. Negative 18x divided by 2 is negative 9x. And 36 divided by 2 is positive 18. All right, if you want to double check, just distribute. You will get the same thing right here. Now again, this is in the form of ax squared plus bx plus c. All right, we want two numbers that multiply to 18 and add to negative 9. So let's write out the factors for 18. All right, 18, 6 times 3 is good. Negative 6 times negative 3 is good. 9 times 2. You can keep going, but you can stop when you find a pair that adds to b. Okay, and from these pairs, we can see negative 6. Negative 6 plus negative 3 is negative 9. So we can use these two. We keep the number 2. And we're going to make two binomials out of this trinomial. We have x squared, so we're going to start with x times x. And then we're just going to use the negative 6 and negative 3 in the parentheses. And that's it. We can't factor this any further. All right, so 2 parentheses x minus 6, close parentheses, x minus 3, close parentheses. Okay, so type it just how you wrote it. All right, greatest common factor, 3, 6, 9. Look at the smallest number, that's a 3. Okay, I can divide 6 by 3, I can divide 9 by 3. Now you see right here, this is actually a negative 3. I am going to include the negative outside of the parentheses. Okay, and the reason I'm doing that is because I want the x squared to be positive. So negative 3x squared divided by negative 3 is just x squared. 6x divided by negative 3 is negative 2x. And 9 divided by negative 3 is negative 3. All right, so we have a 1 in front of the x squared, so we don't have to worry about that. Just write out the factors of negative 3, the constant term with no x. So what times what is negative 3? 3 times negative 1 works, and negative 3 times positive 1 works. Which pair adds up to negative 2? Well, that's this right here. Negative 3 plus 1 would give us negative 2. All right, so we keep negative 3, and we're going to write two binomials in place of this trinomial. Since we have x squared, we're going to start with x times x, and we're going to use negative 3 and positive 1. And that right there is your final answer. All right, so if the term in front of x squared is negative, make sure you keep that negative when you factor out the coefficient. All right, negative 3, parentheses, x minus 3, parentheses, parentheses, x plus 1, close parentheses. All right, make sure you close them. And that's basically it.